Hello and welcome to the Expecting Parents webinar. If you're here, congratulations. Whether you are a first-time parent or a 21st time parent, whether you're an adopting parent, a foster parent, maybe you're going to become a step parent, this is the place for you. So I hope you've got your tea or coffee or whatever your beverage of choice is. Have a pen and paper so that you can take notes or jot down anything that you want to ask me at the end in the Q&A. There's nothing out of bounds, so ask away, that's what I'm here for. Please tell me in the chat when you're due, your baby, how you're feeling, and again, if this is your first or your 21st, so that we know where we are. A quick introduction, my name's Nikki, also known as the Scottish Soul Sister, and I am here to support parents and maternal mental health. I came into this space following my own experience of postpartum depression and anxiety when our son Archie was born in 2017. And getting the support and the help at that time not only changed my personal life, but it changed the trajectory of my professional life too, which is why we're hanging out here tonight, right? So without any scaremongering, without any sugarcoating, I want to make you aware of the services that I provide. I want full transparency. I know that often at the end of these things, you get the pricing structures and the services, and I like to do that now so that we know where we are. The main product that I have is called Stepping into Parenthood, and that is my other baby. That was a labour of love where I have pulled together the learnings and implementations that supported me and still do to this day. Archie's 7 now, and I still tap in and utilise the foundations and the framework that is within that course. It's €99. It is self-paced, so you buy it, download it. You can print off the worksheets as often as you like, or if you're techie, you can do it digitally. But it's yours, there's no time constraints. I'm not involved with it, so there's no accountability. And the reason for that is because when you're a parent, it can be overwhelming. There's so much information going on. So I didn't want you to feel that you have to adhere to another thing, okay? I do offer coaching sessions individually and as a package. So an individual session is €125, and if you buy the package of 4, it's €400. So you get a little incentive there. I highly recommend that we all have a coach, a therapist, someone in our corner that we can go and talk to who is not a family member, a friend, because family members and friends can be an amazing support system, of course they are. But also there can be a veil that we wear because we perhaps don't want to concern them. We perhaps don't want to feel judged by them. Maybe we don't want their guidance or their advice. So it's always good to have someone who is in your corner that is slightly removed. And that is what I'm here for. Okay, so this is not your typical antenatal class. I'm not here to tell you how you should birth your baby, how you should feed your baby, how you make them go to sleep, although I do have some brilliant recommendations of people that can help you with that. But what I'm here to do is to invite you to get to know yourself a bit better. Before you meet this new person, before you are introduced to your new child and you're getting to know them, I think it's a brilliant starting point to actually get to know yourself and your family members a little bit better. And that way we can manage the expectations and navigate the shifts that are going to come. If you are a driver, you did not just get into a car and go driving. You had lessons, you had a test. Some of us had more lessons and tests than others. I had 5, I passed on my 5th driving test. And I had spent so much time with my driving instructor that on my 30th birthday, they gifted me a card and a cheque, him and his wife. But my point being, you don't just jump in a car and hit the motorway, right? There's a process beforehand to prepare you for that. The same if you go into a job. There's normally a training period and there's someone there to guide you. If you want to learn how to play tennis, you'll get a coach. If you want to play a sport, if you go to the gym, you'll perhaps have a personal trainer. And that is what I'm here to do, is to help you to just get yourself into a space where you feel a bit more prepared for this new adventure that you're about to embark on. So how do I do that? The framework that I have used and continue to do so is based on the concept that we have 6 human needs. We all have them and they come in varying degrees because obviously each of us are unique. So the 6 human needs are certainty, variety, significance, love and connection, growth and contribution. I so wish I had known this when I was pregnant, but I didn't, and I've learned it and now I'm here to share it with you. This framework will feed into every aspect of your life. And when I talk about simple, sustainable self-care, I use that terminology because the self-care industry, the wellness industry is massive now. We're seeing the growth. But that in itself can sometimes be overwhelming. So I've broken it down into a simplified way to explain it. What I like to think of is that imagine you've got 3 accounts. And in your first account, that is where you go to for your medical needs. So that will be obviously during your pregnancy for your scans and your checks and thereafter. Make sure that you're getting checked up, make sure your hormone levels are checked, your vitamin levels are checked. That's our physical, our medical and clinical well-being. For the guys as well, we all have to keep on top of our eyesight, having mammograms, smears, prostate checks, our physical well-being, and that is your first account. Your second account of self-care would be all the treats, the lovely things, when you go for a massage or you go for a spa day or whatever it might be that you enjoy, but it's not something you do on a daily basis. So that's your second account. Your third account is your daily. And this is where your power lies, and especially during a transition, such as becoming a parent. And this is why it's important that you're here now and learning this before you have the baby. This is, where I love to tap in and do the preparation work. So your daily habits are going to change. When this little one comes along, there's going to be a shift. And not only for birth mums. I often feel that there's a lot of narrative that is for the birth mums, and some of the poor dads get forgotten about. But this has an impact on everyone. So when we talk about creating routines that are baggy enough to live in, it's because you will not be able to adhere to something 100%, but it's more about raising awareness. It's bringing to the forefront the conversations that you guys can start having. You want to be exploring your values. When this child comes along, are you guys on the same page? Have you discussed things like religion? Are you going to have the baby christened or are you not going to have them christened? How do we feel about the sleeping arrangements? Is the expectation going to be on the parent who is perhaps staying at home? Maybe one parent is going back to work. What does this all look like? Have you even thought about it? Or is some of it just a given that, this is the breadwinner and this parent will stay at home? Or are you going to bring in childcare? How does this all look for you? And the impact of these decisions are going to then reflect in your day-to-day life and how you navigate having this new little person in your life. One of the things that I find really important to talk about, especially when you're expecting, is your budget. You know, if you are living overseas, have you sat down and looked at what that means? Because then you've got visa costs and passport costs. You perhaps are going to fly more often back to your home country to see family and friends. So the budget is something that's really important to just help everything that I talk about, everything that I share, and that I can go deeper with you on a one-to-one basis, is making sure that we are lessening the overwhelm and that we have clarity, because you're going to have to make decisions. And we live in a world where we have lots of resources and it's brilliant. You know, when you go online, you can find any information that you are looking for. But if you don't have clarity on what works for you and what doesn't work for you, then it can be consuming. It can be overwhelming. And what you find is that there's a lot of conflict with that information. So what we want to do is get ourselves into a space where we've got clarity on making these decisions and understanding why we make particular decisions. Being flexible enough to move with some of them, because you might find that when you have the conversations, you and your partner are not on the same page. So when we have these conversations and we map it out, we create a little framework to help just get that clarity around all these different topics. Things like the gift registry. You know, do you guys have a gift registry? What have you got on there? Is it all the new gadgets? The only gadget I really would say that I couldn't have lived without was the little snot sucker thing. And I used to clean Archie's nose with it. It's a Frida. You know, it was probably one of the cheapest gadgets, but it was the one that I couldn't have lived without. We did purchase a babacoosh, which was this pillow, and you put the baby on their tummy and strap them in, and this thing vibrates, and it's good for colic and to settle them, evidently. Archie screamed the house down. We spent a fortune because at the time we lived in Montenegro. So we didn't just have to pay for the thing itself, we had to pay to get it shipped there. And I think we sold it for €10 when we left Montenegro. So that wasn't a winner. So looking at your gift registry and thinking about it through a different lens, you know, can you ask for vouchers for stores, you know, electrical goods, so that you can go and choose things on your own? When we had our son Archie, we ended up having to buy a tumble dryer because we had all these different bits of laundry now. You know, really practical things that sometimes you just don't consider. You know, things like having a salt lamp for in the evening when you're going to change and feed the baby. You don't want to be getting up and banging on the big light and everybody being startled. So having a Himalayan salt lamp was something for us that we just used to have all the time. And that way we had enough light to do those things and transition back into the sleep. What else did we have? You know, are you going to have a doula? Maybe you want to invest in a doula. Perhaps for your gift registry, you could ask people to contribute to help you have someone who advocates for you with your birth plan. Maybe you want to invest in having the course Stepping into Parenthood. You know, that could be on your gift registry. They just need your email address. These are all practical things, because trust me, you'll get the outfits. They come in abundance. But you want to be thinking outside the box. You want to be thinking about things like your meal plans. You know, can you start preparing now and freezing soups, stews, healthy meals that you can just grab? You know, perhaps you'll use a meal plan delivery. There's a lot of them now where they actually just provide everything you need for a meal. So can you outsource and do that? Things like the house. Can you outsource to have someone help in the house? You know, we're all different. So none of this is where I would say you must or you mustn't. I personally wouldn't have someone clean the house because that's not my jam. I am very particular. Some might say I micromanage. But what that comes down to, what I now understand about that, is that I have a driving human need of certainty. So I like to be in control. I like to know what's going on. And this is information that when I started this personal development journey, completely changed my life. You know, often we are victims of circumstance and what is going on around us. And without any understanding of how we tick, what our triggers are, it can be really difficult to then work through them. But when you have that awareness, you then can live your life based on that, and you can tweak, you can evolve with it if you have to change some of it, but at least you're understanding it. So when I talk about certainty being my driving human need, that was obviously impacted when Archie came along because my normal routines were changed. So this is stuff that we want to look at. We want to dig into a bit deeper, but today is just an overview. It's an introduction for you to the services I provide, how I work, so that you will understand if you want to tap in and have a wing woman during this chapter. Other things that you are going to, and come across during the navigation of becoming a new parent are going to be things like your body image. When you go online and it's, the bounce back culture, especially for the birth mums, keep scrolling, be gentle with yourself, and when you have that space around you to just be gentle with yourself and take your time and manage your expectations that your body is going to change. I always laugh because my feet are a size bigger than they were before I was pregnant, and they've remained. And no one told me that. No one told me this was a thing, But I think that appreciation of what your body's actually doing, if you're a birth mum and you are pregnant just now, it still blows my mind what your body is doing. And so we have to give it a bit of grace and some gentle kindness at the end. And also for dads, because again, the impact of your timings and your routines being out, if we're not eating properly because we're all tired, we're parenting, we're just grabbing whatever is convenient, we're not getting to the gym as often, it can have an impact on dads too. So it's looking at these circumstances and going, okay, how can we make sure that we manage looking after our own body image, if you like? Being comfortable, finding outfits that you feel confident and that you feel comfortable, and giving yourself that gift of time. Your identity, well, of course your identity is going to change because you're a parent now to a new child. So like I said earlier, whether it's your first child or your 21st child, there's always going to be that shift in your identity. And I like to think of the evolving of that as opposed to trying to go back all the time. There will be parts of you that will return. There's things that don't get lost. Like, I still crack myself up. I always have a sense of humour, and that never got lost. But your identity shifts. And when we welcome it instead of resisting it, then it makes that journey a little bit easier. It's a bit smoother. Relationships. Talking about the expectations of each other, of your family. What role are they going to play? In this series of webinars I've brought in, I'm doing a webinar for grandparents. I'm doing one that's for the dads, because I think it's important that we talk about the village. Let's talk to the village. Let's see if we can help manage these expectations of the role that people play. What can they do? What would you prefer them not to do? How does this work? Communication and expectation are the two, that's your key for everything, right? Regardless of where we are in life, communication, expectation. Doing your bit of personal development. Within the Stepping into Parenthood course, there are quizzes as well as the worksheets that are there to help you identify your characteristics, some of the things that just make sense, your love languages, personality traits. And when you do that personal development and when you start looking at your life to date, you are shaped by your experiences. You are shaped by your upbringing, your culture, your nationality, your age, your parents. We're all shaped by the experiences that we've had. And therefore, that is what gives us each a unique view on the world. So when you understand that and you understand why you believe certain things, as long as that still aligns with you, then have these conversations. But if there's something that's not sitting right, don't be scared to scratch that surface and explore. I always talk about growth when you've perhaps been working and then you're going to be at home with the little one, your significance, one of the 6 human needs, and your growth may feel impacted. Because when you're in a workplace, you maybe have colleagues, you are receiving a salary for a job that you do that makes you feel that you're contributing. And all of a sudden you might be at home and you're going to different outings and you're with different people. So these impacts can make a difference as to how you feel. Okay, your growth, listen to things that inspire you. I'm not saying like to go and do a master's whilst having a new baby. But what I'm saying is just be aware of your external stimulus, what you listen to, put on a podcast that makes you laugh. I talk about the power of humour and music all the time. And they really do. They really do have an impact on our state and how we are feeling. Look at the things you're watching on television. If you're watching Netflix, crack on, but just look at the content. Just start getting curious about what it is that you're exposing your mind to. And at the end of this, I'm going to send you a quiz, and it's a self-care quiz. And what it will help you do is identify which areas of your life perhaps need a bit of attention. Often our career can be amazing, but perhaps our financial situation is not great. Or maybe our relationships are struggling just now. So it's looking at these different elements and going, okay, what is it that I could be doing with giving some extra TLC to? If you've got questions, please don't hesitate to send me a message, to get in touch, and we can have a free call. I do a no obligation Zoom call for free just to see if there is anything that I can help you with. This is not about scaring people with, maternal mental health statistics or, that some people struggle. This is about preparation. This is about making sure that you step into this space feeling confident and with clarity so that you can make the decisions that are best for you and your wee family. Thank you so much for coming along and hanging out. I hope that some of these things have maybe given you a bit of inspiration to go and look at what you can be doing to support yourselves, look after yourselves, and take care.